Everyone in the village knew her as Grandma Elise. She was small, slow-moving, and always wrapped in the same dark shawl. Every morning, she swept the front step of her stone house. Every evening, she lit her fireplace and brewed tea. To the occupying soldiers stationed nearby, she was invisible. They walked past her house every day without a second glance. "She's harmless," one of them laughed once. "Just an old woman waiting out the war." What they didn't know was that her chimney was never just a chimney. The village sat near an important railway line. Trains passed through at night, carrying supplies and equipment toward the front. Allied aircraft often flew overhead, but never bombed this area. The reason was simple. They couldn't tell what was what from the air. But one night, high above the clouds, a bomber crew noticed something strange. From one small house, smoke rose straight into the sky. Not thick, not random. It came in short bursts. Then it stopped. Then it started again. The pattern repeated. Slow, deliberate, unmistakable. Inside the cockpit, the navigator leaned closer to the glass. "Captain, that smoke doesn't look normal." Down below, Grandma Elise sat calmly by her fireplace, her hands steady despite the danger around her. She added wood, then waited, then adjusted the damper just slightly. To anyone on the ground, it looked like nothing, but from the air, it looked like a message. That night, the bomber changed course, and for the first time, the enemy supply train passed through the village without reaching its destination. No one questioned the old woman, no one searched her house, and the chimney kept smoking. But the soldiers were about to notice something unsettling. Every time that chimney sent smoke into the sky, something went wrong for them shortly after. At first, the soldiers blamed bad luck. A train stalled just outside the village. Another arrived hours late. A third never arrived at all. Officers argued over maps and reports, pointing fingers at drivers, mechanics, even the weather. Nothing made sense. The rail line was simple. The schedules were clear. Yet something kept going wrong. One evening, a young sentry noticed the smoke. He stood near the road as dusk settled over the village. One by one, chimneys began to darken. Fires went out, doors closed. All except one. From Grandma Elise's house, a thin column of smoke rose straight up, then stopped. Moments later, it appeared again. The sentry frowned. "That's strange," he muttered. He mentioned it casually during dinner. The others laughed. "Old people burn wood however they want," one soldier said. "Are you afraid of smoke now?" Another joked. Still, reports kept coming in. Aircraft activity increased on nights when the smoke appeared. Supply convoys were rerouted for no clear reason. Orders arrived too late, or not at all. Meanwhile, Grandma Elise changed nothing about her routine. She baked bread in the mornings. She sat by her window in the afternoons, knitting quietly. And every night, at exactly the same hour, she lit her fire. Inside the house, the fireplace was carefully prepared. Different pieces of wood, different airflow, different timing. Each small adjustment meant something, but only to those who knew how to look. Far above the clouds, Allied crews began to rely on it. "Watch for the village with the lone chimney," one navigator said. "If you see the signal, you're in the right place." The smoke didn't mark targets. It didn't point at buildings. It confirmed timing. And timing was everything. Back on the ground, suspicion finally began to grow. An officer stopped outside Grandma Elise's home one afternoon. He studied the chimney, the roof, the quiet old woman sweeping her step. She smiled politely and nodded. To him, she looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, just a grandma. But for the first time, he wondered, why did everything seem to change when her chimney smoked? The inspection was announced quietly. No sirens, no shouting. Just a notice posted in the square. Routine checks. All households cooperate. Soldiers moved through the village in pairs, stepping into barns, sheds, and kitchens. They looked behind doors, under floorboards, inside cupboards. When they reached Grandma Elise's house, they slowed. The officer from before stood nearby, watching closely. Inside, everything was exactly as expected. A small table, a kettle, a basket of firewood stacked neatly by the hearth. One soldier poked at the fireplace with his boot. Cold ash crumbled and fell. Another tapped the chimney wall, listening for hollow spaces. Nothing. Grandma Elise waited patiently, hands folded. She answered every question simply. Yes, I live alone. Yes, I light the fire every night. No, no visitors. Her voice never shook. The officer studied the firewood more carefully. Different sizes, different cuts. He lifted one log, then another. To him, it meant nothing. Wood was wood. Outside, the chimney stood silent. No smoke, no signal. The search ended. The soldiers left, annoyed and embarrassed. One of them muttered, "We wasted an hour on this place." That evening, the officer filed his report. No evidence found. House cleared. But something had changed. Grandma Elise did not light her fire that night. The sky stayed empty. No smoke rose. High above, Allied aircraft waited longer than usual. Then, much later, a single thin column appeared. Short, delayed, unmistakable. It was not the usual signal. It meant warning. The crews adjusted instantly. Minutes later, a supply train stopped abruptly outside the village, halted by orders that made no sense to those receiving them. On the ground, radios crackled with confusion. Back in her kitchen, Grandma Elise sat down slowly, exhaled, and poured herself tea. They had searched her house. They had found nothing, but now they were closer than ever, and the chimney would never be completely safe again. The mistake was small, almost invisible, but in wartime, small mistakes were dangerous. That evening, the wind shifted. Grandma Elise noticed it the moment she opened the stove door. The draft pulled differently, tugging the flame to one side. She hesitated, listening to the sound of the chimney. Outside, clouds moved faster than usual. She adjusted the damper carefully, slower than normal, longer pauses between signals. From the ground, it looked like an ordinary fire struggling against the wind. From the road, however, someone stopped. The same officer. He stood under a street lamp, watching the smoke bend, then straighten, then stop. Too controlled, too deliberate. He called for two soldiers. They waited. They watched. Minutes passed. The smoke appeared again. Short, clean, precise. The officer felt it then. Certainty. "Stay here," he said quietly. He began walking toward the house. Inside, Grandma Elise sensed it before she heard footsteps. The floorboard creaked outside. Shadows moved past the window. She closed the damper fully. The chimney went dark. When the knock came, it was firm but polite. "Yes?" she asked, opening the door. The officer removed his cap. His eyes went past her, straight to the fireplace. "Your smoke," he said carefully. "It's unusual." She smiled gently. "The wind is strange tonight." He stepped closer, looked inside. Cold ash, no flame, no sound. He waited, hoping the chimney would betray her. It didn't. Above the clouds, Allied crews saw nothing. No signal, no confirmation. They turned away. The officer nodded once and stepped back. "Be careful with the fire," he said. That night, no train was diverted. No aircraft adjusted course. For the first time in weeks, the chimney stayed silent. Grandma Elise sat alone in the dark long after he left. She had come closer than ever, and she knew the truth now. One more mistake wouldn't bring suspicion. It would bring the end. After that night, Grandma Elise changed everything. Not what she did, but when she did it. Days passed with no smoke at all. The chimney stayed cold even in the evenings. Soldiers began to relax again. "See?" one of them said. "Nothing was there." The officer still watched the house from time to time, but suspicion fades when nothing happens. That was the point. Far above, Allied crews waited and learned. No smoke no longer meant nothing. It meant hold. A single late signal now meant go. The code evolved. Inside the house, the fire was no longer lit every night. Sometimes it burned just before dawn, sometimes briefly at midday when no one expected it. Always short, always rare. Each appearance mattered more than the last. One afternoon, the officer returned unexpectedly. He didn't knock this time. He simply stood across the road, pretending to check papers. The chimney stayed silent. He waited an hour. Nothing. Finally, he turned away. That evening, far from the village, a supply convoy rerouted at the last moment. Orders changed. Timetables broke. No smoke had been seen. And yet, everything shifted. Back in her kitchen, Grandma Elise allowed herself one small moment of relief. She had learned what the soldiers hadn't. Sometimes the most powerful signal is absence. But the war was closing in. Troop movements increased. The rail line grew more guarded. Eyes were everywhere. Soon, there would be no room left for smoke at all. And when that moment came, she would have to decide whether to light the fire one last time. The order came suddenly. The rail line would close by morning. New routes, new guards, no more gaps. Grandma Elise understood what that meant. There would be no second chances. That night, the village slept early. Doors were locked, windows dark. Soldiers gathered at the station, focused elsewhere. Inside her house, Grandma Elise prepared the fire one final time. She chose the wood carefully, not too dry, not too slow. Outside, the wind was steady. She lit the flame. The smoke rose once, short, paused, then rose again. Not a pattern, a sentence. High above the clouds, Allied crews saw it immediately. "There," the navigator said quietly. "That's the last one." They adjusted course. Before dawn, the rail line was silent. Trains stopped running through the village forever. By morning, the soldiers were gone. Orders had changed. The station was abandoned without explanation. No one ever returned to search the house again. Weeks later, the war moved on. Then, finally, it ended. Years passed. The village rebuilt. The tracks rusted. The stone house remained. Children played nearby, never knowing why that chimney mattered. When Grandma Elise died, there were no medals, no records, no name in any official report, only one note in an Allied flight log written in pencil. Signal confirmed, final fire received. And that was enough, because they never suspected her. They thought she was just a grandma,